Everything can now be brought together with an easy, simple to remember phrase that I call the 5 A's of the psychology of sales. So, the first A, attitude to be positive. Secondly, ask the right questions. Thirdly, actively listen to what the customer says. Fourth, acknowledge what the customer says to you or asks you. And 5, ask another question based on what the customer has said or they've asked you. The 5 A's. This is the fundamental foundation of selling. Let's look at the first part of this, attitude to be positive. Having a positive attitude before you start selling is extremely important. The thing is, if you have a positive attitude, you sound more confident. The customer will trust you more. You'll have more, or appear to have more, belief in what you're doing. Imagine if I was delivering this film and I was all of it, then you would have less confidence in what I'm saying because I appear less confident. And I would appear less confident because I wouldn't necessarily have a positive attitude about what I'm doing. This would reduce your trust levels in me, thus affecting the actual delivery of the training that you're doing through this system. You see, a negative attitude is self-defeating because you won't sound like you believe in what you're saying, and the customer will sense your doubt, and that will create an area of doubt within them, and then they won't trust that you believe in what you're saying, so they won't trust and believe in what you're saying either. This means that you'll have increased levels of dissonance within your sales process. Harder sales calls, less sales results, you'll become more negative, you'll end up procrastinating or giving up the job or sales altogether, when all that needed was to have a positive attitude about what you're doing. You know, if you don't fully believe in what you're saying, then the trust aspect in that relationship will be hampered or damaged. And if we remember what we said in the wheel of relationships, actually that revolution would stop because you don't have a positive attitude. It all ties together. Objections with a negative attitude deflect and defeat you. You lose sight of your objectives, and ultimately the negative, or the negativity should I say, will overwhelm you, and that will be that in sales. So the next step, part 2 as it were, is to ask the customer the right questions. I think I've mentioned this before. If you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers. And conversely, if you ask the wrong questions, you'll get the wrong answers. And funnily enough, even knowing the right questions isn't enough. Because if you ask the right question at the wrong time, you'll also get the wrong answer, potentially. So you've got to ask the right question at the right time. And in fact, if you ask the right question to the wrong person, you won't get the answer you're looking for. So you need to ask the right question at the right time to the right person. And if you remember our communication matrix, you'll remember that was a key part of communication. All of these aspects, asking the right question at the right time to the right person, will enhance your chance of success. How many salespeople even think to this level? And that's the difference between a great salesperson and a salesperson that gets by. You've got to decide who you want to be. How much effort do you want to put into this? And asking the right questions is a key aspect of this. This sounds so obvious, doesn't it? And yet, how many salespeople do you know, and in fact yourself, if you're being honest, haven't actually thought this through fully? Of course, then you're going to be saying, what are the right questions? So worry not, because we're going to be looking at that later in the sales wheel. Third point, actively listen to what your customer says. Now, in many ways, this is the easiest and yet hardest part of the process. Easy because we've been listening to people all of our lives, and hard because we don't actively listen. Actively listen means really focus on what the customer is saying. really listen. It's frankly amazing how few salespeople actually actively listen to what the customer says. Actively listening means focusing 100% on what's being said, to the exclusion of all else. It doesn't mean partly listening and partly thinking about what you're going to say next. It's complete focus. It means not making any judgments on what the customer is saying whilst they are talking. Just focus on what they're saying. This is actually extraordinarily difficult and requires practice. You'll have to practice with people you know to get used to this. If somebody is talking to you and you don't understand what they're saying, part of active listening isn't just sitting there going, what did he say, whilst missing what's being said. It's by saying, excuse me, hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I didn't actually understand what you said there. Could you explain it in a little bit more detail? This is part of active listening, being aware that you're not understanding or processing what's being said. And if you think about a communication matrix, communication is partly based upon the understanding and processing of the information being said to you. So if you're going to actively listen, you need to understand what's being said. If you don't understand, then you're not actively listening because you're not processing. It really astonishes me how many salespeople don't really listen to what people are saying to them. Actually, when you think about it, it amazes me how few people really listen to other people when they're talking. Let me ask you, as a customer or as a person, how do you feel when you're talking to somebody and you know they're not listening? It's rude, it's unnecessary, and it's so easy to fix. For a salesperson, all you've got to do is listen to the customer.